Summit night was to be the longest and hardest of my life. Waking up at 11 p.m. for some frenetic last-minute preparation for our midnight departure, all the while scoffing down cookies and tea for some energy, some ibuprofen and anti-nausea tablets as a precautionary measure, and rehydration salts in the camelback in preparation for a long night. By midnight we were ready to go, and a long strain of head torches began curling its way up the final ascent of Kilimanjaro. The trek that night was both long and difficult, a 6-hour affair, going over steep terrain at the highest of altitude. The spirited singing of the previous 4 days ceased almost entirely, as it was difficult enough to move at that altitude, let alone sing, and the rugged nature of the terrain meant the ascent was a very slow stop-start affair, adding to the aggravation. As we ascended higher, I was dogged by an overwhelming desire to sleep, not helped by the occasional opportunity to rest on my poles during the frequent short stops. By mid-climb, iPods and power tracks were in full swing, and it was at this point that I got sick for the first time, bringing up much of the water and the food from earlier that night. However, after the sickness, I felt a lot better and was ready for the final assault. The steepness of the final ascent, and also the presence of the famous Jamaican rocks, meant that this stretch, the only 300 to 400 meters, took what seemed an age. There was constant zigzagging across the slopes, and as such, even though at times you could see Gilman's Point, it seemed infuriatingly far away. Nerves were now frayed, bodies tired, lips cold, and words of encouragement, which were plentiful, became as much a point of angst as it was inspiration. As we ascended the final few meters, the night sky brightened and the sun began to rise, bringing with it welcome light and warmth to our fatigued bodies. From Gilman's Point, at 5,685 meters, the beauty and magnificence of the moment competed with the weariness of the body, and for most of us it was a silent moment. Pictures of achievement at Gilman's were quickly taken, and in what seemed too short a time, the call to move on to Uruhu, the real peak of Kilimanjaro, came. Just another 200-meter vertical climb, I thought. Couldn't be too hard, right? Wrong. 200 meters up it may be, but it was more like 200 meters down, 400 meters up, and 2 kilometers sideways around the crater rim. This began for me the most dissatisfying 1.5 hours of the trip, as we pushed our bodies to Uruhu. Each movement seemed slower, each moment more drawn out, and I was to get sick twice more within sighting distance of Uruhu. So when I finally did arrive, my only thoughts was, get the flags, take the pictures, and let's get off this damn mountain. Mentally and physically exhausted, there was little time for celebration. The trip back was faster, probably less painful, but definitely more annoying. The group was now dispersed across the mountain, and as such it was up to the individual to find their own way back down. This was particularly difficult at Jamaica Rocks, where the path was not obvious, and when that was over we encountered the dreaded scree, a slippery surface of loose pebbles and rocks, where descending required a semi-ski, semi-downhill jogging technique that promised a painful fall for those who tripped, or bashed and blistered toes for those who didn't. By the time I got back to Kibu, I was exhausted. The world seemed in slow motion, and the 45-minute snooze I afforded myself as I waited for the rest of the group to return was probably the best 45-minute sleep I've had in my life. All too soon it was time to leave again, to head back to Horombo for our final night on the mountain. The trip back to Horombo was brisk and energizing. The effects on the body as you descended was noticeable, with conversation starting again almost immediately, and energy levels rising along with spirits. Compared to the upper mountain, any of the previous rugged paths seemed like a smooth bitumen road, and we were all in good spirits by the time we got to Horombo. The final morning in Kilimanjaro greeted us with some fine weather and some amazing clouds. It would be the last time for a long time that many of us would wake up above the clouds, so I took some time to savour the view. The last day on the mountain was warm and enjoyable, and having achieved the mountain top, I was able to stop and take in the mountain, enjoying the various eco-zones, relaxing, chatting, and taking some photos of the scenery. The further down we walked, the more energy we built, and the 6-hour walk went by surprisingly quickly, and in no time we were back at the gates of Kilimanjaro, and thoughts turned to congratulations and celebration. The sight of Doug at the bottom, greeting us with a cold bottle of beer, was one of the sweetest sights of the trip. There was much celebration, backslapping, smiles and high fives as we signed out and waited for everyone to descend. In the meantime, Kilimanjaro beer continued to flow, and I tested the theory that Kili beer could make you stand taller. After 5 nights on the mountain, the promise of a shower, clean beds and fresh clothes that awaited us back in the hotel was overpowering, and when we did arrive back at the Impala Hotel, we all indulged in what could have been the best meal and the longest shower of our lives. Dinner was an extremely enjoyable outdoor barbecue affair, thanks to Doug and the other partners who had the foresight to call ahead and demand a celebratory dinner worthy of our achievements. Speeches were short and spirited, awards embarrassing, and with a celebratory cigar in hand and beer flowing freely, many of us stayed around long into the night. The last and final day in Tanzania was to be spent with a small group of us going to visit the Amani Street Children Charity Home. Amani, which means peace in Swahili, has nothing to do with Giorgio. It provides food, education, counselling and medical care for abandoned street children in Tanzania. Prior to the trip, many of us had purchased stationery to give to the charity, and a small group of us, led by Marie, had decided to pay a visit and hand these over in person, along with a great deal of uneaten snacks from the trip. We're greeted at the door by Catherine, who regretfully tells us that on Sunday mornings most of the children are at church. However, this does give her the chance to give us a private tour of the facilities, which are both large and well maintained, as well as provide some history and background on their work. It was amazing to see how much they'd done with such little resources, and to realize how little it takes to make a big difference. As little as £6, for example, would feed a kid for a month. We also get a chance to play some football with some of the younger kids, which is both fun and competitive, as well as eye-opening on how unfit we are, and in short order, we're all huffing, puffing, and covered in grime and sweat. I left the orphanage with a newfound perspective as to the privileged lives that we all live, respect for those who dedicate themselves to such remote and worthy causes, and an understanding of how little it takes to make such a huge difference to underprivileged kids. Looking back less than 1 week after the trip had transpired, and there's an overwhelming feeling of pride, enjoyment, and camaraderie. Just as the sagely Doug said at the celebration night, as time moves by, it's the positive memories that stand out, memories of great company, brilliant sunrises, merry song, and fun moments. Even as many of us struggle to readjust back to our working lives, there is still a sense of energy and drive to complete our fundraising and share with the world what we have achieved. Thank you to the Deloitte Community Investment Team for organising this event, in particular Nick and Catherine. I think everybody agrees that this trip has been a highlight of our time at Deloitte, if not our adult lives. We have met many amazing people, made some long life friends, and along the way raised a lot of money for our chosen charities. That's Cancer Research UK, Children with Leukemia, and Help for Heroes. For those interested in supporting these charities, fundraising will continue for the next few weeks, so please do visit my fundraising homepage. And for anybody else who's thinking about visiting Kilimanjaro,
yeah, exactly. Right after.